So I don't know exactly how long this is going to be. I think I'm going to try my best to make it as short as possible. Cut some stuff out if I can. I've already made one or two S25 type videos, but I figured I wanted to do this one too. Again, I'm going to cut stuff out, and you see that his video is 17 minutes long, and if I were to not cut anything out, I think half of his video is talking about One UI 7. I'll say software aspects of the new phone, meaning that a lot of that stuff can go back to older devices. So not even like halfway into the video, we actually start talking about the hardware of the phone. So again, that's unedited. Hopefully I will be able to edit most of it out so that way my video isn't too long. But let's go ahead and get started.
This is the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, and honestly, the moment you pick it up, you can tell that this thing is a slicker, neater, better designed phone than last year's. But it's only after spending a few hours getting deeper that I've started to realize this thing is next generation in a way that we've not really ever seen before. Like, the entire way that the company is even thinking about the smartphone is changing with the S25s. So these are the 8 key things that you need to know. Starting with the design, which is a pretty substantial upgrade. The S25 Ultra is 15 grams lighter than the S24 Ultra. It's enough to notice for sure. It's 0.4 millimeters thinner, which makes this the thinnest Ultra phone that Samsung has ever made. It's got a stronger titanium body thanks to a new, more compacted molecular structure and 29% tougher Gorilla Glass Armor 2 on the front, which is a pretty dicey one to test, but Samsung is saying that when they first introduced Gorilla Glass Armor last year, they noticed immediately that when those new phones were coming in for repair, there was 60% less damage on average on the screens of those phones.
Okay, so I'm not sure how we should feel about that. In fact, I also want to take back what I just said about half the video being about software, but whatever. But I do remember, because I've already seen this video once. Okay, 60% less damage. Cool. But it's still damaged. So, I mean, I guess we don't have the metrics of, all right, how many screens were just not damaged at all as a result of this new type of coating or type of glass, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's still damaged, which is why they came in for repair. So I mean, I'm sure there are some improvements, but this just seems kind of one of those made up type of metrics. 6% less damage, or maybe just certain people aren't bringing their devices in, or maybe they're getting repaired someplace else. I don't really think this is actually as quantifiable as they're trying to make it.
% less damage on average on the screens of those phones, thanks to this armor glass. So, a further 29% improvement on that, well, it's not going to hurt.
29% improvement. Is that a real number? I don't know in terms of how they're trying to say that this is that much strong. I don't know.
To be really honest, I think the colors are a complete miss. They're all boring. They tried to make them interesting with the names, like the hero color is called Titanium Silver Blue, and this one is Titanium White Silver. Let's call a spade a spade. It's grey. Plus, they've colored the back panels, but not the sides, which to me just makes these all look like, those badly matched refurbished car doors. Colors aside, though, I was extremely happy to see that after about 5 years of subjecting us to a slow, steady form of hand torture, Samsung has finally rounded off the corners of their phone.
And every time I hear somebody make a complaint about a long-standing problem, and he's used he's used Samsung Ultra devices and gone back and forth between that and iPhones. If you don't like the design of the phone, stop using it. Like that's really what it should be is, oh, this phone hurts my hand. I don't like it. Let me see what else is of similar size and maybe it doesn't hurt my hand. So yeah, if this was, a one-off ago, they changed it this year and they changed it back the next year. Like, okay, cool. They made a design change. Maybe you did or didn't buy it. People were complaining about it and whatever. But for 5 years, he just said, why on earth would you keep using it if you just flat out don't like the way that the phone is designed? Like, I don't understand. I really don't.
As obvious as a solution as that was, does make this feel more designed for their core demographic.
And again, it was an obvious solution if that many people were complaining about it. But if that many people were complaining about it, yes, Samsung, I guess, just didn't listen. But for those people complaining, I feel like another obvious solution would be to just use a different device.
humans. But then when I properly started using the thing, I realized it's only a half improvement, since in the process of chopping off the corners, they've also chopped off the slightly rounded sides of the S24 Ultra. So those are now flat and sharp. To be fair to them, the flatness does give the phone a very clean, futuristic silhouette when you look from the front, but it does come at the cost of it still not being close to as comfy to hold as, you know, these more pebble-like phones like the Google Pixel 8a. Tell you what is very nice to see, the bezels are now even tinier, 15% smaller than the ones on the S24 Ultra, which is a small improvement, but still fantastic, because it means that within this thinner, lighter, less painful body, we are now also getting a slightly larger screen. It's gone from 6.8 inches to 6.9. Nice. And then you interact with the software. So last year with the S24 Ultra.
Okay, and again, hopefully I will cut this out, but you can see, okay, now starting at 2 minutes and 31 seconds, we're going to start talking about the software. One UI 7. This technically has close to nothing to do with the actual phone itself. Yes, I get some of these features are going to come to the S25 series first, or maybe only the Ultra first, you know, whatever. But a lot of it's going to end up back with older devices, unless Samsung chooses to age gate certain things, which they probably will. But yeah, this has nothing to do actually with the phone itself. So yes, we're seeing 2 minutes and 31 seconds. I'm gonna cut a bunch of this out because I really don't care. But let's press, and then hopefully I'll come back and show you the timestamp of, you know, how much of it was that when we just stopped talking about One UI 7.
One of the most impressive things about this phone was not actually the hardware, but more just how much Samsung had upgraded their One UI Android skin. It felt like a...
And yes, he even just flat out says, it's not even about the hardware, it's about the software. Yes, the software which is going to be on other devices.
Yes.
And now, okay, so here we are. I've cut a bunch of stuff out, but we are at 9 minutes and 57 seconds. Almost 10 minutes in to a 17-minute video, and now we're really going to start talking about the hardware. So everything that you didn't see, which if you haven't seen his video, it's, you know, close to 5 million, or 4.5 million people have, as of me recording this, and by the time I've uploaded it, who knows how many people will have seen his video. Everything that was talked about, whether or not Samsung will do it, from a technological standpoint, would be capable on at least last year's phone, and probably I'll just say since Snapdragon changed from, you know, 8 Gen 1, you know, I think there was an 8 Gen 1 and 8 Plus Gen 1, then 8 Gen 2, 8 Gen 3, and then now the 8 Elite or whatever. So yeah, I'm sure all of those at a technical level should be able to support all of those software things you just mentioned. Excuse me, and they all should be getting One UI 7. So it's like, all right, cool. We're more than halfway into the video, and you really haven't talked much about what's so special about this phone. So I'm going to, you know, let it continue playing, and we'll see if there's anything interesting worth actually keeping.
5 Ultra. The stuff that, if you buy this phone, you actually own. Well, if you'd asked me what the single best standout thing about the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra was, I'd have said hands down, the screen. All flagship phones have had brilliant screens with crazy brightness and high refresh rates for ages now, but the two things that...
and let's make sure that we don't just lump the iPhone in there for always having high refresh rate screens. I don't remember when ProMotion came, but even with recent developments, we see that for the most part the screen scales back to like 80 hertz instead of staying up at 120. So, you know, Android's different, but yeah, okay.
Rated Samsungs are 1, the durability, which is improved now, but also 2, this anti-reflective coating that isn't nearly as gimmicky as you might expect it to be. This coating felt like it single-handedly cut away 50% of screen reflections, which in turn made the screen so much clearer than the rest. And that coating has now been upgraded again with the S25 Ultra. I wouldn't say the difference is as transformative as the jump last year, but really at this point it's just further cementing Samsung's display lead, with also now completely new Hop 3 display technology. No one's used it before, but Samsung's talking about this like it's some kind of miracle compound, saying that it should dramatically increase the touch response rate, image quality, and also battery efficiency of the screen. The battery itself, by the way, is still the same 5,000 mAh cell as before.
Which I've complained about in my other video, and I've complained a lot about stuff that there's no reason that this battery, the size hasn't increased in a couple of years. Okay, for as big as this phone is, comparatively speaking, that's a small battery.
Which is good. They're saying that thanks to all the efficiency improvements, you can expect an extra hour of video playback per charge compared to even last year's phone.
Okay, so and I think I got really irate when I think it was Dave 2D's video up here that I made my little feedback on. But again, another YouTuber with millions of subscribers giving a pass. And I think I essentially said the same thing as, I've spent a lot of time ragging on Apple for things and for these YouTubers giving Apple a pass. But what he just said, because of all of the efficiencies, even though we didn't upgrade the battery, you should expect an extra hour of video play. Like is that something to be proud about? Okay, I just don't like how casual he's just like, yeah, they didn't do the easy thing, which is just make the battery larger, the capacity higher. But, new chip means extra hour of video play. Okay, all right, get it. All right, whatever.
Sense that they haven't expanded the battery, given, the thinner design, the thinner bezels,
and yeah, I don't know why I think I'm so focused on battery capacity, because it's the one thing that they all have in common. They all need a battery. So we can talk about the anti-reflective coating. It's a new feature. Or we could talk about refresh rates, or where the speakers are placed, or the fact that this has a stylus on the inside. There's so many things that are or I'll say quasi-unique, whether it's to a brand or to a line within a brand or an operating system. But the one thing they all have in common is they all have a battery. And from my perspective, that's an easy thing to improve upon. Maybe not necessarily year over year, but every couple of years at least. I think you should be able to see a relatively large increase in battery capacity. And to just stay at this 5,000 milliamp hour for their flagship device, their top of the line flagship device, is just absolutely insane. And then, of course, you have, and I'm bringing the plus in here just because, but 5,000 milliamp hours in this one. But then I think 4,900 in the plus. So we can't give you 5,000 because it's not the ultra. So as long as that one doesn't go up, we're not going to increase the one in the plus. And then the regular one is way down at 4,000. And I'm just like, I refuse to give them a pass. I just absolutely refuse. And Dave 2D, and I know I was pointing, and you didn't see me before. I was pointing over here, but I was actually on my monitor screen, my laptop screen. But yeah, I think he gave him a pass. I have not watched Marquez Brownlee's video, and I probably won't. I watched the first 15 seconds, and I think he was like, yeah, pretty much these phones are exactly the same as last year. But yeah, battery capacity, easy way to just say, hey, this is now a 2-day phone. But they're just not going to do it because they have no reason, no incentive, because there's no competition in this country.
Need to also fit an S Pen inside of here. However, I do also have a feeling.
And in fact, the last thing I'll say, and I apologize. Yes, you have to put an S Pen in there, and I'm not going to pull it up like I normally do, but the Sony Xperia 10 Mark VI has a 6.1 inch display, way smaller device. Also has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Now, Sony could do better because not only does the 10 have a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, so does the 5 and the 1, which are other, the 1 is a substantially larger phone, so they could do better as well. But here, I hate when people just say, the size of the phone is truly the limiting factor of battery capacity. No, it's the limiting factor of the physical size of the battery, but in terms of how those cells in there are arranged and what type of technology they use, a lot of these other companies are using silicon carbon. But yeah, there's so many things that could have been done that Samsung's just why? Why are we going to waste our time and effort doing that? No.
This is the year where we're going to start seeing the baseline for phone batteries go up significantly.
Except for the phone that you're literally talking about right now.
But while Samsung was at the very top of the battery wars leaderboard last year, I'm doubtful it's going to stay at the
And I don't know if I agree with that statement being on. I know when he does his little battery rundown test, so maybe that's where he's just looking at it. But I think I'm so focused on the size of the phone last year, too. The battery capacity could have been significantly higher the way that it could have been this year.
And on a similar note, one thing that this phone doesn't have, which honestly at this point I just find puzzling, is magnetic charging. Apple has had it since 2020, and if you are going to wireless charge, this is just
And I talk about Apple a lot, so I'm not giving Samsung any type of grace. Yeah, why don't they have it? I don't know. I thought they did. Yeah, I really thought that they did. have some type of wireless charging, or maybe it's wireless but not magnetic. So I guess they haven't put the stronger magnets in there to be able to hold it. But there are plenty of things that when we look at the iPhone, we're like, how hasn't the iPhone done this? I mean, heck, Android as a whole has had this baked into the operating system for like a decade. Like right now we're looking at an always-on display on the iPhone. I think that just came out like 2 years ago or something, maybe 3 at this point. And we're like, yeah, how did Apple just decide to put this on their phone when, I'll say close to budget Android phones have always on displays. So again, they all do their things at their own pace, but the main reason that all 3 of them, so whether it's Apple, Google, or Samsung, do it so slowly is because there's really no competition. And if you want an iPhone, you're stuck with whatever Apple chooses to give you. In this country, yes, Samsung definitely is the leader, and Google exists. But for the most part, since Samsung is so far ahead in terms of market domination in the realm of Android, they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter if these other companies have it. You probably don't even know those phones exist because we're in your face all the time in your carrier, on TV for commercials. So we'll just do it as slowly as we feel like it.
Better way of doing it, since it allows you to hold your phone up sideways and it improves the efficiency of the wireless charging. Thankfully, the Taurus O-Stand 360 case, our sponsor, actually grants the phone that ability, which suddenly opens up a whole new landscape of accessories. I've been using this type of Taurus case on my iPhone 16 Pro Max. I used it on my Samsung before that. I genuinely think that this is the best case in the world because it's not just that it adds magnets, those magnets also double as a kickstand, as a hand grip, and basically as a way to mount your phone onto almost anything. Oh yeah, just realized Josh uses one too. Plus, this is the most protective that Taurus cases have ever been. There's raised protection here for the cameras, raised protection here for the screen, and all along the inside, there are now 18 air pockets for some very extreme shock absorption. Link below to find out more. Oh, there is good news on the performance front with the S25 Ultra. This thing comes with 12GB of RAM on the base model and the Snapdragon 8 Elite 4 Galaxy chip, which is effectively a big power upgrade combined with a few little extra tweaks specifically for these S25 phones. The main thing though is just the Snapdragon 8 Elite is enough of a jump from last year, 30 to 40% depending on how you're measuring it, that it's kind of like moving up a whole new tier. Like this is the point where Android is back on track and in a lot of ways now actually ahead of Apple's performance. Been a long time since that was the case. The one thing,
and I'm not going to try to rag on it because yeah, it is nice to see performance improvements and things like that. But when it comes to super powerful phone, I'm going to probably eat these words at some point in time because I forget the gentleman's name. Juan Bagnell, I think, some gadget guy is his pseudonym. Yeah. But yeah, he talks about how powerful these phones are, which yeah, they are. They really are. And I would hate to say, well, we don't need that much power. And and because it is good that they're getting more powerful. It really is. And yes, if the 8 Elite for Galaxy is more powerful than the A18 Pro, which I guess is in the most recent iPhone, then great, that's fine. And I'm happy that exists. But with that power, I also wish, at power and efficiency, I also just wish that there was a higher capacity battery. So yeah, I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, because it's not. It really isn't. But at the end of the day, if all of us truly had 2 or maybe even 3-day phones in terms of how frequently you had to charge them, I feel like that would really do us all a huge, great service.
Out for is just that some early devices that have had this chip have had thermal issues, which is probably why at the same time Samsung has fitted this phone with a 40% larger vapor chamber.
And thermal issues can be problematic, well, are problematic to the point where yes, if you're playing games or trying to video edit or something on your phone and it overheats, video editing, yeah, okay. Playing games, yeah, it kind of sucks because it's like, man, yeah, this has a smartphone. I should be able to do all this stuff. But if it's overheating and you're just doing normal everyday things, yeah, that's a problem.
New thermal interface material for faster heat dissipation. Whether or not that saves it, we'll have to wait for the full review. But then, as well as that core performance perk, Samsung has also been working with the chip maker to add in 2 extra features. The Pro Scaler, which uses AI to basically upgrade any content that you watch on your screen. Like if something's really low resolution, your chip will apparently notice and figure out how to upscale it without you even needing to think about it. It's similar tech to what Samsung's 8K TVs use. Although I would be lying if I said I could actually notice the difference in person. But then, also the camera. The chip is also supposedly tuned to specifically improve the low light performance in Samsung's phone, which, big if true, but I will only believe it when I see it. Speaking of which though, good to see that Samsung hasn't completely forgotten about cameras amidst all the AI hoo-ha. So, the most obvious change is the 12 megapixel ultrawide has finally become a 50 megapixel ultrawide. Now they are about 3 years behind a lot of other phones in getting there, but...
And yeah, I honestly don't care because I'm not a huge picture taker, but yeah, to his point, if it has been years, or they are kind of years behind other competitors that have done this, it's because there's no competition. There's no reason for Samsung to say, hey, let's make this better, because again, they're going to give us what they feel like it, because unless you choose to take the time to look for the competition, you're not going to see it. So they're like, oh yeah, these suckers, we'll take what we give them.
This is great news, because the ultrawide was always the ugly duckling of Samsung's camera system, and it's now being upgraded. Not just improves the ultrawide shots, but there's also a dramatic resolution bump to close-up macro shots, since it uses the same camera. And then, at least based on what Samsung is saying, the even bigger camera changes are the things that you can't see. So their underlying software, the Pro Visual Engine, has been upgraded, which they're saying means significantly faster shooting and also better quality and smoother zoom shots by inserting extra frames in between the animation. And the smoother aspect I can attest to. The better aspect is not as clear to me. Like, on one hand, this is a photo taken at 30 times zoom, and I can absolutely see the improvement in texture and detail on this year's phone versus last year's. But then, counterexample, I took this shot at 10 times zoom, and maybe because this is a face and it's harder for AI to understand faces as opposed to surfaces, but here, I wouldn't say it's really better at all. There's a new AI image signal processor specifically designed to improve selfies. There's best face, which means that if you keep the motion photo feature on, then any time after you've taken a shot, you can go back and both instantly make it either a boomerang or a slow motion clip, which is nice, but also use on-device AI to comb through and pick the best face it can from all the face options. Not a feature that we've never seen before, but I was surprised just how much this can rescue a otherwise lost image. Samsung's also saying that they've specifically worked with social medias like Snapchat and Instagram to uplift the quality of footage taken within those apps, but I also feel like they say the same thing every year, and I'm never really particularly impressed. This phone has the company's first ever spatial temporal filter, which basically allows the phone to distinguish between moving and stationary objects when you're shooting video, so that it can treat them differently. It means that the phone can focus on making sure that moving objects don't look blurry, while also making sure that static objects don't look grainy. It is spot on exactly the thing that Samsung's camera needs to focus on. We just don't know yet if it's enough of an improvement to actually fix it. And then to add to that, the sound quality of your videos might well be improving too, thanks to a new audio eraser feature, which is not dissimilar from what we've already seen Google Pixel phones do for a while now. But basically it means that the phone will pick up all the different types of noise in a video that you shoot, for example wind noise or room noise, and it allows you to adjust the levels of them. And then the sprinkle on top is a bunch of new pro features, like 10-bit HDR video recording, which has 4 times the dynamic range, but then at the same time I kinda hate it because it just makes your screen unnecessarily bright when you watch it, and things like log recording, which gives you ultimate color flexibility for editing afterwards. So I would say not one of the biggest on-paper camera upgrades, but then if they do pull off all the software wizardry that they're saying they will, it could still become one of the most meaningful ones. And that's the S25 Ultra.
So at this point, hopefully I've cut out even more, because what he started talking about were more software features, camera improvements, some AI stuff. Like these, again, have nothing to do with the actual phone. This is all stuff that is a part of whether it's One UI or Android, at whatever level you want to talk about it. But there are things that either already exist on other phones or will come to other phones as time goes on. And in closing, one, I have no idea how long this video is, but I think here's the problem. Early on in smartphone days, yeah, every year it was like, oh man, that's kind of cool, that's kind of cool. Maybe even every 2 years, it was like, man, that's a big difference between this phone and the phone I had a year or 2 years ago. But now these phones are becoming so iterative that we don't need to release them every year. And what ends up happening, different from Microsoft Windows, is that because there's a new version of the hardware and the software coming from the same company, we feel like we have to tout them both the same, Whereas, yes, there are some small additions or improvements to the hardware, because again, more than half of this video was talking about software, which again, I don't, he doesn't have his full review, so at some point, he will, and maybe I'll make a video on that. But if we're talking primarily about software, then that's what's coming out really and changing every year, which will then be available on multiple years worth of hardware, which didn't really improve that much. So I feel that yes, if we want a new version of Android every year, cool. Looks like Google is starting to do like 2 versions every year, like because the beta for Android 16 I think is already out. Here we are in January, and Android 15 just came out in September, October, somewhere around there. So I think they're going to this. Hey, let's have 2 major, semi-major versions or releases every year. But the hardware doesn't need to be refreshed every year. And when it comes to, let's say, laptops or desktop computers, I don't know if, I don't know release cycles. Not going to make it up. And if they are not every year, that's perfectly fine. Microsoft does their, like, they don't release a new version of Windows every year, but they do have iterative updates, like monthly stuff, things like that. But then they'll have, they're not called service packs anymore, but they'll have their large scale releases of of Windows 11, for instance, is what we're using now, and that's a perfectly fine model. But of course, with these cell phone vendors, they have to make money, so I get it. But at the same time, I feel like if the S25 was the top tier Samsung device for 2 years, and then we get an S27, I feel like that would just be better, and then we can really focus on the software. But new phones, some people like myself get a new phone every year. If they're only coming out every other year, then that potentially hurts company sales. So I get it, but I just feel like it leads to videos like this where we're talking about the phone that just was released and spend more than half the time talking about the software that's on the phone that will be available on other pieces of hardware. So with that being said, I'm done. I don't think you mentioned the price in the video. Other videos have prices, Google it, whatever. I've never purchased an Ultra device. Don't plan on buying one this year because they're just too big. Probably will at some point buy the regular S25 because I always do, and then I sell it or whatever because I'm never satisfied with them. But yeah, hopefully I'm able to capture everything I said, and I'm able to edit about half of this down. So with that, that's all I have to say.